I must be getting ready to start a meeting. All right, we'll call the meeting to order of the Western Riverside Council of Governments Executive Committee for Monday, February 4th. Do you want to open? Oh, see, I just think it and you do it. Register yourself here as a way for us to take roll so that we know that we have a quorum and who's here. All right, we have 19 folks here, and that looks like a quorum to me. Please rise and join me in the Pledge of Allegiance to be led by our Vice President and Mayor of Hemet, Bonnie Wright.
Please join me. I pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all.
And I think I referred to you as Vice President, but I think Mr. Pence still has that job.
Yeah, I don't want that.
Okay. At this time, I'd like to welcome our new members to the Executive Committee of WRCOG. I'll just call your names and allow you to receive all the adoration of the rest of us. Victoria's not here. Yeah, I was looking. I didn't see her. I see Daniela Andrade from Banning. And the guy who's occupying my old seat on the Temecula City Council says James Stewart, but he goes by Stu. Welcome, Stu. Do we have any requests to speak under public comments on items not on the agenda?
I have no requests.
All right, then we'll move on to item number 5, minutes from January 7th. If you've had an opportunity to review the minutes and would like to place a vote, now would be the time to do so. I'll accept a motion and a second, and the rest of us can cast our votes on those minutes.
Do they let you vote if you weren't here but read the minutes? Some places do and some don't.
So let's direct that to Steve DeBon because I have an opinion, but my legal degree has lapsed. This question comes up frequently, Steve, and I think I know the answer. But if you were not present at the meeting that the votes cover, can you still vote on the minutes if you have reviewed the minutes and find them to be to your satisfaction?
Yes, you can. You can. Your approval of the minutes is based on, can be based on your review as well as the and then based also on your understanding of or your review of the procedures that were followed. So yes.
Okay. Thank you. All right. The minutes are approved on a vote of 18-0 with 1 abstention. We'll now move down to the consent calendar. We have the consent calendar items broken into 2 categories. Consent calendar items that are action items, 6A, B, C, and D, and then informational items E, F, G, and H. Is there anyone requiring to pull any of the items from the consent calendar? Seeing none, I'll accept a motion and a second to approve the consent calendar. We have a motion and a second. Please register your votes on the screen in front of you. Yeah, that's the problem screen down there, Brian. No pillow over the head of the screen. All right, I'm just going to go ahead and end the vote. Janice, we have 19 yes, 0 noes, 0 abstentions on the consent calendar. Bring us down to reports and discussions. Item 7A, PACE programs, activities update. Oh,
Good afternoon, Mr.
Casey's not here today?
He is not, no. I'll be
Did you
filling
do
in for him.
something to him?
Hopefully I can do as good as him.
I'm sure
I
you
know
will.
I'm not as good looking, but I'll
Yeah.
try.
All
I'll
right.
try to be as funny.
All right.
My name is Michael Wasgood. I'm the program manager, and I'll be presenting on the PACE programs this afternoon. Quick background, PACE programs finance energy efficient water conservation renewable energy projects that are paid back through property taxes. We have a few topics to cover today. Brief update on the program. We have 2 member jurisdictions to accept. CPACE deposit for new applicants and 2 new providers that we'll be considering. Brief overview of the project, the program so far. I believe last meeting or one of the previous meetings it was mentioned we surpassed $2 billion in financing in our residential programs. And we added our commercial programs on there. We anticipate some pretty significant growth in the next few months on those, and should see some pretty decent changes in the numbers coming up. To start off, we have 2 new associate member jurisdictions. The City of Alameda accepted a resolution on December 18th, 2018, and the City of Santa Barbara adopted a resolution on December 4th. And we now need to adopt Resolution 0219, which accepts them as associate member jurisdictions, or associate members of WRCOG, and sets a public hearing for the next meeting on March 4th. New applicant for commercial PACE, we would like to consider an application deposit for new commercial PACE providers, mostly because we've seen an onslaught of new providers coming in. We want to try and keep them honest, I guess, but also to cover some of the costs between legal and staff that it takes. It's several months that it takes to bring on new providers, and this would cover some of the costs for that. We've looked into other programs, and the $15,000 that we're requesting is in line with other programs and what they're requesting. So we don't feel that it'll be a detriment to the program to request this.
If you don't spend the entire $15,000, where does that go?
The remainder funds will be returned to the provider.
All right.
So on that note, we have a new provider that we would like to consider. We actually have 2, the first one being Twain Financial Partners. On January 29th, staff visited their site in St. Louis, reviewed their operations, and determined to bring them forward to the ad hoc committee, which they met last week. The ad hoc committee recommended to proceed directly to this committee for approval for Twain, partially because, or mostly because, they have a large project in Temecula that the developer would like to actually brought Twain to us to use for that project, and getting them in quicker helps to fund the project and helps the project go forward. We also have another provider, Lord Capital. On October 11th, staff went to their site in New York, reviewed their operations as well. They went to the ad hoc committee on December 3rd, and the Admin and Finance Committee approved them to come to the Executive Committee for approval on January 19th. Lord Capital previously was a capital provider to one of the other programs that has worked for us in the past. So I have 5 requested actions today, the first being to accept the 2 new cities of Santa Barbara and Alameda, and adopt the resolution to set the public hearing for next month, authorize the $15,000 deposit for all new commercial applicants, and support the Admin and Finance and Ad hoc Committee's recommendations of Twain and Lord Capital. That's my presentation. If anybody has any questions, I'd be glad to take them.
Okay, are there questions for Michael before we take up the item for a motion and voting? Hoopa Valley.
Over here,
Where are we at?
on your right.
All right, there we go. All right.
Hey. Good afternoon, sir.
Yes.
What is the current deposit required?
We currently don't require one.
Okay, and new entries on into the PACE, they're aware of this $15,000 deposit?
Yes, we've spoken to all the providers that are currently in the process of applying with us, and they're aware of it.
Okay, thank you very much, sir.
And it's just commercial providers?
Correct.
All right, any other questions? If not, I'll accept a motion to approve item 7A in a second. Please register your votes. City of Menifee. All right. Lake Elsinore is a yes, and the rest of the votes are 20 yes votes, 0 no votes, 0 abstentions. That motion is approved unanimously. Move down to item 7B, report from League of California Cities. Aaron Sassy.
Good afternoon, Erin Sassy with the League of California Cities. Nice to see some of these new faces in the room. We had a very successful conference last week. I know a couple of you attended. We did 2 new mayors and council members academy this year, one in Sacramento and one down here in Irvine. And I know we had a lot of people from our region, so I think that having a local option was definitely a benefit. It sounds like we'll be doing that every other year so we can get more people at the training. So look forward to that in coming years. A couple items, I know you have some information in your agenda packet. We do have 2 trainings coming up. The LA division of the league is actually hosting a ballot measure training. That's on February 21st. And then our division training is on February 22nd, where we bring in some of our boards and commissions and do some overviews, give some advice from some of our long-term city council members. So I want to encourage all of you to come if you can, or in particular your new electeds from your cities. But it's not meant just for our new elected, it's really meant for anybody serving on the various regional boards and commissions and agencies. With that, a couple items. AB 213 is a bill I have talked about in the past, but now we have the actual bill number. So AB 213 is the bill that would restore funding for cities that had inhabited annexations. This really impacts Temecula, Riverside, Beaumont, Lake Elsinore, and San Jacinto. I want to encourage all of our cities, though, to support this. This has been a long battle that we've been fighting. Going back to 2011, when our new cities lost funding, some other cities also lost the funding for those inhabited annexations. So please get some support letters. Let's show our other cities that have lost some funding our solidarity with them.
What is the legislation number also?
It's AB 213.
AB 213, all right.
213, AB 213, Reyes. We do have a sample support letter available too, so really easy, but I'd really like it if all of our cities could support this.
Yeah.
One federal item that I wanted to bring to your attention is HR 530. So if you remember last year when we were fighting the small cell bill, a lot of you went up to Sacramento. Well, after that, the FCC put out regulations that really do limit your local authority for regulating where the 5G deployments occur. There is legislation to repeal the FCC's regulations. So I want to encourage all of you to reach out to your congressional members, so Congressman Calvert, Congressman Takano, and ask that they really sign on to this legislation, because we would like to see those regulations terminated or repealed. So it's HR 530. We do have a support letter that I can make sure I get out to all of you. We did just submit our letter over the weekend. So really good legislation, though. In your handout, there is a one-pager on AB 11 and SB 5. These are legislations to bring back some form of redevelopment. You can see the differences. I think that there'll be a lot of negotiating on these bills, and we'll probably come to some sort of a middle ground, and there will only likely be one bill that will make it through. So maybe take a look at those. One really thing that's exciting is the President's State of the Union is tomorrow, and our league president, Jan Arbuckle, is attending. So kind of nice to hear that we'll have city representation in the room when it's happening. The Governor's State of the State address is next Tuesday, if any of you want to watch that. And with that, I'd be happy to take any questions, but the bill introduction deadline is coming up on February 22nd, so we still have a little bit more time for all of the lovely pieces of legislation to be introduced that we'll be working hard with you on. Thank you.
Thank you. Are there questions for Aaron? Well, it's a receive and file, so thank you for that report, Aaron. Always appreciate you coming in. Next item on our agenda is item 7C, and we're fortunate to have a very special guest with us today, Councilmember Alan Wapner of the City of Ontario. Councilmember Wapner has been a member of the Ontario City Council for nearly... No? Don't read all of that?
I don't need my bio. Come on.
Does it make you sound like old?
It makes you sound really old.
Really old?
Yeah.
Hey, wherever I go, they make me
I
listen to mine.
appreciate the attempt. I really do. Good afternoon, everybody.
afternoon,
I'm
and
among
we're-
friends. This is really.
We're gonna get
good
a-
for him. Fight on.
Well, hey,
Fight on.
how about the guy next
Yeah.
to him, Alan?
Yeah, we always meet at Tommy's after the SC football game. So yeah.
Well, tell us about SCAG then. If you don't
Pardon
want to
me?
talk about yourself, tell us about SCAG.
Gosh, you always want to cut to the chase. Before I do that, though,
Yeah.
he told me he'd kill me, but I got to make sure everybody here recognizes Arnold San Miguel, right? He
Arnold-
is your
Arnold
guy at SCAG.
Arnold said to say that?
No, he said do not well, you know
Yeah, don't
Arnold.
say
He's
that.
Mr. Low Key.
Which
Where's Arnold?
one is he? Arnold, stand up.
Arnold, yeah, let's hear
So
it
we
for
know
Arnold.
who you are.
He does a great job for you. Yeah, he's never.
Is
He's
it
been
your
with
birthday
SCAG.
today?
Been SCAG for 52 years. So let me start out by doing this, and Rick has heard this before, and it's very sincere, is that no matter where I go, I talk about WRCOG, and without a doubt, you are the finest COG that I've ever seen anywhere. No, it's true, all of you, and I want to thank all of you for what you do for the region, and I really am proud to represent the city of Northeast Vale, so I can become like part of your group. Okay, so we're going to talk about SCAG. I think everybody here... What, no? Okay.
No, not so much.
You guys all know what SCAG is, don't you? Is there anybody that's newly elected that doesn't know? I mean, I don't have to go into the history, right? Well, then your friends will tell you. SCAG is the largest metropolitan planning organization in the country, and you folks are certainly members. Represent 191 cities, 6 counties, 19 million people. So, and we are primarily responsible for regional planning of transportation, housing, economic development, environmental kinds of impacts. We're in the midst, we're actually just starting our regional transportation plan, our sustainable community strategy, and in the same cycle, the regional housing needs assessment, the RENA process. There's a lot going on at SCAG, and there's a few folks up here that actually represent cities and the county at SCAG, and I'm sure they're doing a great job representing you. I can tell you that, and I'm sure they're keeping you updated as to what's, they're all looking at me, updated as to what's going on. The Regional Transportation Plan is really an environmental document required by federal law. It talks about all the transportation projects that are going to be built within the next 20 years in Southern California. Basically, we take all the projects that the County Transportation Authority submit. We assume that they're going to meet the 2 requirements. They meet financial constraints and environmental conformity. When we do the Regional Transportation Plan, it's reviewed in its entirety, which means that every project has to meet those 2 elements. If any one project doesn't, the entire document is returned to SCAG, and we have to kind of remedy the entire situation. So it's really important that whatever kinds of projects come to us, that we review it. And the whole thing is that we're going to find a way to move Southern California without adversely impacting our environment. That's the purpose of the Regional Transportation Plan. Sustainable Community Strategy is a state document, and that really talks about land planning and global warming, climate change, those kinds of things. Regional Housing Needs Assessment, that's where we look at what the total housing requirement is for the SCAG region, and then we kind of break it up into what we feel each city and unincorporated area is responsible for. Does get kind of controversial, obviously. We find that you're short on units, and what we look at is all available space, which is kind of ludicrous because that includes like tribal land, that includes military installations, college campuses, anything where housing can be built is what's included in your RENA. So, and you are represented on the RENA committee as well. So there's a lot going on in SCAG right now. many of these things you guys are participating in. They're all required types of documents that we have to do and plans that we have to write. So we're keeping busy over there. You got a great staff. We have an interim executive director, Darren Chidsey, and we're doing a search for an executive director at this time. Questions?
Questions for Mr. Wapner, President of the Southern California Association of Governments.
And council member of?
For how long?
Ontario. How long have I been there? I just got reelected in my 7th term, so 24 years. I think I bought John. Didn't I beat John Tavalone? He had 24 years, right? And I'm going to go 28.
I think you're like a couple months shy of his time, but just don't get hit by a bus outside.
I don't know. And you already renamed the building, I saw that. I'm thinking, what are they going to do for me? No, anyway, I appreciate the opportunity to come here. And once again, I want to thank you for the hard work that you're doing, because obviously whatever you do here does benefit everybody in the region. And we certainly consider our county, especially the western side, part of the region that you are assisting. So, no questions?
Thank you.
And I'm glad that we're getting Karen back too.
Yeah.
Okay, well, right. Thank you very much. If you ever need anything, Arnold's here. Thanks.
Hey. We always appreciate someone who's short on words, right?
That's right.
Item 7D, update on the development of a sustainability indicators report. Chris Gray.
Good afternoon. Members of the committee, my name is Chris Gray. I'm Director of Planning and Transportation for WRCOG, and I'm here to do a brief presentation. Supervisor Washington, that was clearly a remark at my wordiness on a sustainability indicators report we've been working on. This is a extension of a report we provided to our Admin and Finance Committee, as well as our city managers previously. So back in 2012, WRCOG embarked on the development of what we called the Sustainability Framework. It was technically titled the Economic and Sustainability Framework. And in that report, it identified 40 to 50 key regional indicators. It covered a broad range of issues: transportation, employment, the environment. Data was collected. Not surprisingly, there wasn't a lot of data collected after 2012. And part of the reason why was there were a lot of indicators. Some of them were particularly complex, and we picked up the document in the middle of 2018 and determined that it was appropriate to update the indicators, but we felt we should take another look at the indicators. Why? Because 40 is pretty long and it took a lot of time, so we felt we should narrow that down to some key issues. So we went from 40 down to 15, and we also focused on indicators that were readily available. And the reason we did that was we felt it's important to continually be presenting this information to you and to our member agencies to see how we're doing, and it allows us to track progress. Touched on the same issues: transportation, economy, and the environment, but we instead of having a broad range of indicators, just focused on some key ones. So we're here to present the results of our analysis to you, and we want to talk about some of the good things, some of the not so good things, and also just present a broad range of information. One of the issues that we wanted to bring to your attention is in terms of health. There's some things we do really well. We're continuing to make improvement in air quality, and in particular, we're making tremendous strides in terms of public safety as measured by violent crimes. So our violent crimes per 100,000 residents is lower than the statewide average by about 20%, and has decreased since 2010 by a commensurate amount. But something we don't do so well at is, not surprisingly, we don't have as many healthcare facilities as the rest of the state. There's a statewide average of number of beds, doctors, clinics per 1,000 residents, and we're generally speaking at a half to 40% of that. In terms of energy and the environment, per capita VMT has gone down slightly since 2010. We're doing incredibly well in terms of water usage, meaning that in 4 out of our 5 water districts, per capita residential water use has decreased significantly. And then in terms of renewable energy, we are well on track to meet the 2020 goals, both in Edison and for many of our public utilities. In terms of education, I'd say we're doing okay, but there's some areas for improvement. One of the measures that's commonly tracked in terms of education is percentage of persons with a college degree or some college education. We're less than 50% right now for adults, and that's about that same value is 55% throughout the region. And in particular, another common metric on the education side is high school graduates meeting base requirements for Cal State, UC schools. This doesn't mean they actually get in, that means they meet the minimum requirements. And of our high school graduates, less than half of them currently meet those criteria. And I want to just highlight this. This is high school graduates. These are not people in high school. These are not adults. These are graduating high school students. So when you think about the universe of people who go through our educational system, to us that would be a concerning item. We've also been looking at economic development. One of the statistics we shared with the Admin Finance Committee and the members of the TAC is that our household income adjusted for inflation has actually gone down over the last 5 years. And part of the reason is that a lot of the jobs that we've been adding, we hear about that we're at full employment, we hear we have 4% unemployment. Well, unfortunately, a lot of the jobs that have been adding, based on our data, are in the food service and retail business. And then the transportation, warehouse, and manufacturing accounts for about another third. So roughly 2/3 of our jobs we've added in the last 5 years have not been in the professional businesses, technology, anything like that. They are in the transportation or warehousing or in the retail. Another issue, and this is something that we've talked about, is percentage of residents working outside of the county on a daily basis. It's almost 2/3. I will point out to you that, as many of you know, WRCOG last year moved offices. I found a study that WRCOG had done in the early 2000s cleaning out some desks that talked about one of our continuing issues is number of people who commute out of the county to go to work. And this was back in 2002, and the number was about the same. So what's happening is that we continue to have an issue, and we all know this, and we've had for several decades now, if not longer, of people working outside of the county for work. RTA, this is a real positive. They are one of the handful of transit agencies across the entire Southern California, even the country, who've shown increased ridership. So one of the questions is, why did we do this? Well, we think it's important to talk about, are we making progress? We as a region, for example, invest significant amount of money in things like education, economic development. So the question is, yes, we have low unemployment, but are we getting the jobs we want? We would say, are we getting the results? And one of the phrases I like to use is moving the needle. Are we moving the needle on some of these key indicators? I will tell you, I don't have solutions, but I think we should be talking about these issues. While we don't have all the answers, we think these are questions we should be talking about. And I also want to say, is it all bad? Absolutely not. We have some tremendous assets in the region, the water, the energy, the environmental factors, the public safety. We're doing tremendously well on these criteria. And I think it's important that we celebrate these accomplishments and we realize that it's very easy to talk about all the negatives, talk about all the bad things happening in the region when that's not the case. So the next steps is we are going to compile all this information on a website and share it with our member agencies, put it on our website. We're also committing to track this data on an ongoing basis. And then a couple of other key items we want to report back to you. We're holding a Future of the Cities conference that's going to be the end of April to talk about these indicators. It'll be a key part of our presentation, and then when we presented this information to our city managers, they asked to form a group to talk about if there's any things our city managers could do to talk about some of these key issues. And we are in the process of forming that group, and we'll be meeting, we're trying to schedule a meeting for them in March. Mr. Chairman, it's a receive and file item, but I'm happy to answer any questions that anyone might have. And I also wanted to let you know that your city managers have all gotten the data that's in the report, and if any of you would like to see the actual data. We presented everything on a regional basis, but a lot of the indicators are available at a city or sub-city level. Mr. Bash, I believe I'd sent that to you. Bonnie Wright, so if anyone is interested in the data, you want to know about your community, I'm happy to provide that to you.
All right, thank you, Chris. That was very thorough and succinct.
Thank you.
Are there questions for Chris? the city of Riverside wants to speak, but he came in late.
May I speak?
So I'm going to make him wait. No,
It's
go
a
ahead.
tough chair. Man. Just a reminder, and the chair was there this last week at the Riverside County Transportation Commission meeting where we had a similar conversation of looking to the future and how do we encourage, incentivize the jobs that we want, more desirable jobs, higher income jobs in Riverside. So I know a number of us are on RCTC as well, and you would assume that we would bring information back and forth, but I think especially for the Future of Cities event that RCTC should be invited to that. And I'm sure, Rick, that you have conversations with Ann, but we just want to make sure that we're intentional about that because the conversations are the same and we need to coordinate the effort as best we can.
Thank you, Mayor Bailey. That's a great point. Cities don't always have the same rep on RCTC as they do on WRCOG or RCA or the other boards. So I wholeheartedly agree. Thank you. Yeah. Any other questions? All right. Receive and file. Thank you, Chris. Next is the Public Service Fellowship Activities Update. Hello, Cynthia.
Good afternoon, members of the committee. Cynthia Mejia, WRCOG staff analyst, here to provide you an update of the WRCOG Public Service Fellowship Program. The fellowship program was launched in 2016. It began as a partnership with WRCOG, UCR, and CBU with the goal of directing talented young people graduating from local universities to public sector careers throughout Western Riverside County. WRCOG is currently operating the third round of the program, which placed 15 fellows throughout member agencies. Current fellows are more than 2/3 through the program and have been working on a myriad of assignments ranging from legislative analysis to topical research. Current fellows will complete the program in March of this year. Staff is therefore in the process of planning for the next round, which will be my focus for today's presentation. Through conversations with members of the Administration and Finance Committee, the Technical Advisory Committee, and a Fellowship Ad Hoc Committee, a series of proposed changes to the program has been developed, largely focusing on program sustainability and eligibility. In January of this year, the Technical Advisory Committee endorsed all proposed changes, which I will briefly go over now. When it comes to program eligibility, staff has historically focused recruitment efforts entirely with partner universities, including UCR, CBU, and Cal State San Bernardino, which was added as a partner last year. Staff has received recommendations to expand to additional universities, perhaps outside of the subregion, to increase the number of candidates with technical backgrounds. The committee supported expanding recruitment efforts to additional universities within and outside of the subregion, with the focus of attracting students in technical disciplines such as IT, land use planning, and civil engineering, which member agencies have expressed a need in. On another note, the current application for the program states that an applicant's candidacy will be evaluated on academic standing and GPA. However, a minimum GPA requirement had not been established. As an extension of this policy, members supported allowing all candidates with a connection to the subregion, including those who live, work, or are native to the subregion, to also apply, and enacted a minimum 3.0 GPA requirement. When it comes to fellow placements, staff has traditionally placed fellows in WRCOG member agencies, though members of the private sector and non-member public agencies have expressed an interest in hosting a fellow. The ad hoc committee recommended continuing this practice for now, but was open to expanding the opportunity to non-member public agencies to host a fellow in the future, provided that agency pay for all program costs. On the topic of program sustainability, funding for the program has come from PACE carryover revenue, which, as you know, are declining. WRCOG has funded the past 3 rounds, which can cost up to $375,000 per round if a fellow is placed in each member agency. In an effort to extend program funding, the committee considered recommending alternating placements over 2 years, so every agency that does not receive a fellow one round would be eligible to receive a fellow the following round. The committee also expressed interest in directing unused beyond funds towards the fellowship program when that distribution occurs. As an extension of promoting greater program sustainability, staff explored options to increase the quality and reliability of applicants. By way of background, staff faced the challenge of attracting a large pool of qualified candidates at the commencement of the current fellowship program round, despite an extended recruitment period. In addition, multiple fellows have been hired out of the current round into full-time positions elsewhere, causing them to leave the program well in advance of the March completion date. In an effort to address this, the committee supported an additional program change, which aims to reduce the number of fellows that may seek supplemental employment during the program and allow them to fully dedicate or concentrate their duties as a fellow, including hiring part-time and full-time fellows, where currently enrolled students would be hired on a part-time basis for 9 months as the current practice, and recently graduated students would be available for full-time employment would be admitted on a full-time basis. In terms of next steps, staff will be releasing the application for both prospective fellows and for member agencies that are interested in hosting a fellow this coming week. Staff will also be reviewing all applications for the fellowship program and recommending placements over the next few months, with an orientation scheduled in June of this year, and in July, the next cohort of fellows would begin their placements. That concludes my presentation for today. Considering all modifications mentioned, the requested action before you is to direct staff to implement the following changes to the fellowship program, including number 1, recruit fellows from additional universities, both within and outside of the subregion. 2, expand candidate eligibility to students and recent graduates who live, work, attend school, or are from the region and meet other minimum qualifications. 3, establish a minimum 3.0 GPA threshold for all applicants. 4, alternate fellow placements over 2 years, so members receive a fellow every other year. And 5, admit fellows in either a part-time or full-time capacity. And with that, I'd be happy to answer any questions the committee may have.
Excellent, Cynthia, thank you. Are there questions? City of Norco. Oops, sorry.
My question is what other universities are you thinking of?
We've considered a number of universities that still service the subregion that are still local, including UC Irvine, Cal Poly Pomona. Cal Poly Pomona has a really good planning program for graduate students. We've also looked into USC and UCLA, which local students also have enrolled in, and most of the time, or some of the time, they do come back, so they would be eligible to participate in the program. UC Irvine would also be a member, as well as Cal State San Marcos.
I guess my feeling on that is that we have the university within our subregion, and I would really not want to go outside. Otherwise, I'm pretty much in favor of everything else. Thank you.
Thank you.
Right. City of Riverside.
I just want to commend staff again for creating this program. I think it's one of the issues we talked about in the previous discussion item was the brain drain and work, job, housing balance. And so I think that this addresses that. And its leadership by example is showing that the governments are taking interest in this and leading by example and keeping their talent local. But I like the fact that we are. That talent could be commuting to UCLA or USC. And, you see the talent on the dais, I guess, from one of those schools in LA. And in the audience, I don't know, President Wapner was so fond of that school, but he's not listening anymore, so he doesn't get credit for that comment. So I understand the point from Councilman from Norco, but it does, I think, address, and it keeps the individuals here. They might be getting an education somewhere else, but it's all about them, coming and rooting themselves in this community and working here. We've had success with that. The city has had success with that. I believe we hired one of those interns recently, but so I'm all for the program. I want to thank the WRCOG leadership for continuing it.
Thank you.
Thank you, Mayor Bailey, and my comments would be very similar. I think maybe there's a potential middle ground with Kevin's comments, Mr. Bash, if we were to perhaps make it one of these items, either a local university or you reside or you went to high school locally or something like that, so that we're not offering first crack at these opportunities to our local students.
Right. And if I may, we would still give priority to local university students like UCR, CBU, and Cal State San Bernardino, as well as Cal State San Marcos. We would just extend the eligibility to any students who either live in Riverside County and go to other universities, work in Riverside County and go to other universities, or just attend those universities that are native to Riverside County.
And I think he was thinking that Cal State San Bernardino is not actually in Riverside County. But after hearing Councilmember Wapner's comments about North Eastvale, I'm guessing maybe it is in Riverside County. Who knows? Brian, you're showing up as Eastern Municipal because you moved seats, but
yes, sir.
I know you're a Marine at heart, so.
And the beautiful city of Lake Elsinore.
And the beautiful city of Lake Elsinore.
Thank you, Honorable Chair. So I have a couple questions. On the outside agencies, how is that going to look? I mean, who are we going to allow, or what was the conversation about allowing others in, and how do you actually repay those program costs?
For outside host agencies or universities? Host agencies?
Host agencies.
Yeah, so the proposed topic was to potentially allow private sector entities, like consultants that work with public agencies, like law firms or planning agencies, to participate. That was not approved. If they were to participate, they would contribute the full fellow match. So if they were to have a fellow placed in their agency, they would be responsible to providing the full fellowship stipend plus an administrative fee.
So then it would be different than our current member agencies. We don't. So they would provide the cost.
Right. So current member agencies don't provide a fee towards the fellowship.
So isn't one of our challenges right now finding enough fellows?
There is, and sometimes we do get candidates that are interested in, for example, law or a similar field that doesn't specifically correlate with a member agency. So maybe public health, and we don't have any host sites that offer specifically public health opportunities. And so if we were to allow a consultant or any non-member public agency, like for example, if the candidate is interested in transit, we don't currently have RTA on the board or in the fellowship program to participate. So this would allow them to.
And so how do we recoup our admin costs to now coordinate this for another agency?
They would be responsible for paying the administrative cost as well as the fellowship stipend.
To WRCOG.
To WRCOG, yes, correct.
The other one was on the every other year. If we're expanding our pool, is the issue getting enough or controlling the cost?
That's a good question, and we have considered expanding the program to additional universities to attract students in technical backgrounds. One of the biggest issues is maybe working with universities to attract specific fields for specific students in specific technical backgrounds. Alternating the placements over 2 years would allow us to extend the longevity of the funds, which is a problem right now.
Okay. We just need our PACE people to pick up the program. That's what we need, right? Thank you.
Yeah.
Thank you, Chair.
City of Norco.
To respond, I like Supervisor Washington's idea. I think if we can just establish that, you know, they have some connection to the region, I would be fine with that. I also have to make a correction that I understood Ontario was a sub, that it's actually northeast Norco. and I thought Lake Elsinore was southwest Norco. Sorry, I'm sorry. Put me in the middle. What can I do?
City of Harupa Valley.
Yeah, Cynthia, they put me at the steps of the basement, so I'm way over here in the corner. So I stand with Kevin and on his feelings on keeping this regional. And I had a question on, does CVAG or Sandbag have a same program, a fellowship program in their COGS?
They don't currently have a similar program like ours, like the fellowship program. And then one of the benefits of expanding to additional universities that are still regional would be to include students that have like civil engineering and civil or land use planning as a background. Our fellowship program is unique in the sense where other regional agencies don't have a program like ours.
Okay, and also on one of your slides, you said you mentioned something about 50% match. Were you considering asking the host cities to match the funding for that fellowship?
Yes, that was one of the proposed modifications that was presented to the TAC committee and the fellowship ad hoc committee. Ultimately, there was no consensus, but we proposed requiring member agencies that do get a fellow to contribute 50% towards that fellow stipend for that year.
Okay, that's all I had. Thank you, sir.
Brian, I'm showing you in the queue again. Are you in the queue? No, sir. Okay. District 5, Supervisor.
Yeah, as far as San Bernardino, I don't think there's an institution in LA that comes close to the level of Cal State San Bernardino. And I might also point out, I believe it has a satellite campus in our county in Palm Desert. So I think we should try to get all the talent we can from there, because I think the finest people come out of that school. Go Coyotes.
So Cal State San Marcos has a campus in Temecula. So now we're covering 3 counties. Any other counties we should throw in? All right. Any other questions, comments, suggestions? Come on, Matt. No? All right. Thank you.
Thank you so much.
Good report, then.
Yeah. Yeah, what was the recommended action? Recommended action is, are we okay with staff's recommendation, or did we seek to modify that to a degree based on the conversation? Not so much. All right, we have a motion and a second. Please register your votes. Okay, that motion is approved. 20 yes votes, 1 no vote. Can we display the vote since it's not unanimous?
It is displaying on the screen, sir.
Okay, no, it is now. I just need to open my eyes. All right. Mr. Johnson, report from Technical Advisory Committee. Reports from committee representatives, starting with SCAG, Regional Council and Policy Committee. Are there any requests to speak? Yes. Mayor Bailey.
Well, as the president's looking at me to make sure and provide a regional housing needs assessment report, is the Riverside County's representative, and he comes up here and he says it's a controversial committee to be on. That's the first I've heard of that. Thanks a lot, Mr. President, for putting me on the controversial committee at SCAG. But as your representative, we had a meeting today at SCAG Riverside offices, which are available to anybody that would like to come on a monthly basis. And when I get this information up, I'll give you the next meeting date. But today's agenda was focused on something that is applicable to us as a sub-region. Let me see, get the terminology correct. Sub-regional delegation guidelines. And so there's potential for WRCOG or a combination of cities and the county to come together and become a sub-regional delegate of the subcommittee, the Regional Housing Needs Assessment Subcommittee. And so I know I've talked to Chris Gray about this, and I think that there's a movement. I don't know if we need to bring it back to WRCOG to make a decision on that, but staff is looking at a cost-benefit analysis to see if it's worth the effort in becoming a sub-regional delegate. It would give us a little bit more local control, but potentially. Anyways, I'll let staff and the pros there look at the cost-benefit analysis. One of the questions I had, though, and I didn't bring this up at the SCAG meeting today, but I think that they would offer maybe we could do an amendment later on. So SCAG does give $2,500. I think it is $2,500 for each city or entity that combines efforts towards this sub-regional delegation. And so there's some funding attached to it, but is that enough? And so that would be my question as staff looks at a cost-benefit analysis is how much do you think it's going to cost us in staff time or otherwise to actually facilitate that 2-year process, really, or 1.5 years. I think we have to get that request in, and all the cities have to go through their own process to sign up to be a part of this sub-regional delegation. And again, it would give us a little bit more local control over the numbers that are provided to us within that delegation. So that was the main action item today that I think we probably should have on this agenda in the future. Whether or not it takes 30 or 60 days to go through that cost-benefit analysis, I'll leave that up to you. The other discussion items, and you can go on. They had some nice slides that you can go on and take a look at. The initial framework for developing SCAG's regional determination of those numbers was discussed today. The related local planning factors was discussed today. So realizing that universities, military bases, as was mentioned earlier, do factor into those numbers. For us, we have a green belt that is 1 house per 5 acres. And so there's some unique planning related factors for each of our cities, I'm sure. And so that was discussed as well, and how that is providing input into the ultimate algorithm that will spit out the numbers. And then a short, not really discussion, but item on the legal action filed by California Department of Housing and Community Development against the city of Huntington Beach. So if you want to know more about that, you can ask me, or you can go online and read more about that. So as I'm your county representative, Russell Betts is the alternate around Desert Hot Springs, and we'd be glad to talk to you, or again next month's meeting at SCAG and/or the teleconference center here in Riverside. San Bernardino has a teleconference capability as well. SCAG offices there. It's March 4th at 10 o'clock. So about 10 to, today was to 11:30. 10 to noon is the time that I've set aside for these meetings, at least to be on at the meeting. So it's March 4th, 10 to noon.
All right. Thank you, Mayor Bailey. Any other SCAG-related reports? Ben Benoit, our representative at AQMD. Do you have a report?
We had a rather lively meeting at AQMD this last Friday. We have an item coming before the board. This is the first time the whole board has heard it. I'm on the subcommittee for refineries, and we've heard this item, I believe, 3 times now at that subcommittee. Now we brought it to the board for its attention. Although we did not make a decision, we did give staff some direction as to what to potentially do for this item. And the item is modified hydrofluoric acid. 2 of the refineries in Southern California use this particular chemical. It's a rather nasty chemical. And there's a neighborhood group in the area of those refineries that does not want to see that in their refineries in their backyard anymore. But the cost to switch both of these refineries to the newer type of system could be north of $600 million for one refinery and another $300 million for the other. And both refineries might not be able to do that. So that's sort of hanging out there for these 2 refineries as they're trying to figure out what they're going to do. We had about 100 speakers on this item, and so the meeting went well into the afternoon. And I'm just we'll be seeing where this goes with AQMD staff. They've been asked to go ahead and create both an MOU and or potentially do a rule for this. So either one of those items could take either a few months with the MOU or years with the rulemaking process, depends on how it goes. So it could be very interesting, but one thing to be mindful of is that if this is a type of thing that if it were to get voted on, could cause your gas prices across the region to raise quite a bit. But also could obviously lend to some safety concerns down in the region that does have these refineries out in LA. So that was the major item for the day.
All right. Thank you, Ben. Brian Tisdale, CalCog.
Yeah, so our next meeting is in March, and I will be stuck in Yosemite with the Honorable Councilman from Ontario. I look forward to it.
Stuck. I'm on the wrong board.
Yeah, we all are.
We suffer for you.
Nice. Thank you for taking one for the team, Brian. Mr. Executive Director.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. First wanted to respond to Mayor Bailey's discussion about the RENA delegation. That's also a topic that we'll be bringing up with subregions planning directors in the next month or so, and we'll get their take on whether they think it would be appropriate for us to get involved in that, in addition to any cost-benefit analysis there. And then also, I know that Councilmember Wapner did not want Chuck to provide a long bio, but I've got to say, that in 24 years, one thing that I think we are all super, super thankful for, and that is your leadership, Councilmember, in bringing Ontario Airport to us under local control, and we're already seeing the benefits of that. So I think we were one of the first cogs to support the efforts to do that, and we're just glad to see that that was successful, and we thank you for your leadership. And then also I wanted to mention, actually, if you could go to the video, I know that many of you at one time in your life have been asked the question, maybe it was in a bar or someplace else, but how many people does it take to screw in a light bulb? We are actually answering that question for you, as we're pleased to say that after several years of effort that we're underway in replacing about 50,000 street light bulbs here in our sub-region for 11 jurisdictions under our regional streetlight program. And as you know, the purpose of the program, first and foremost, is to bring these streetlights under local ownership, and that's being accomplished among 11 jurisdictions. Once we retrofit the light bulbs to LED, the cities that are participating in the program are going to be realizing a savings of about $60 million over 20 years. And then in addition to owning the poles, there's additional revenue and public safety applications. And as you could see in the pictures, one of the other things that is sometimes downplayed a little bit is just how much better the appearance of the nighttime sky is going to be in our subregion. So we are starting to see the retrofits occurring in the city of Murrieta. They're the first one out. So far, Siemens, which is the group that's doing the retrofits, they're telling us that they're able to replace about 80 to 85 lamps a day. On page 70 of your agenda package is sort of our best case, worst case scenario of how long it's going to take to retrofit all 50,000 streetlights. But worst case scenario, it all gets done and wrapped up in, I think, April of 2020. So it's a project we're really excited about. We thank you for your leadership in bringing it forward, and we think the results are going to be really, really stunning for the subregion. So with that, Mr. Chair, that completes my report.
Thank you, Mr. Bishop. And Mayor Ciarda, did you want to add anything to that about the streetlights, since you're going to be the guinea pig?
No. I'll wait till they're done. We're glad to be the first, though.
Yeah. Always the eloquent speaker. Items for future agendas. Any recommendations? Items that you'd like to hear for future WRCOG agenda? All right, general announcements. City of San Jacinto.
Thank you. Most of you know that I do a lot of corresponding with the White House, and today they asked me to be a part of a briefing on the State of the Union address that's going to be occurring tomorrow. So I wanted to kind of fill you in and give you a little heads up. The title of it is Choosing Greatness. And he's got several points that he's going to be making. One is that we can have safe and legal immigration systems if we work together. Also, he's going to update us on protecting the American workers and what he's doing for that. This one was the one that I thought you all would be interested in. I've been talking about how much he wants us to help financially help us in promoting some of our infrastructure projects. So he is actually going to ask Congress to produce infrastructure projects that they would like to complete, so we want to stay on top of that. He's also working to lower the cost of prescription drugs in healthcare system. He's also going to be talking about ending the foreign wars and bringing our families together in home. So these are just some of the things that he's going to talk about, but keep your ears open for that infrastructure information, because we can all use infrastructure funding, and it's just really important. He really wants to help us, so we might as well go out there and get that money. Thank you.
Thank you, Crystal. Any other general announcements? All right, our next meeting is Monday, March 4th, 2 p.m. right here, and we are now adjourned. Thank you.